I guess one of the things that I've been finding interesting is, the context of the book, the brief, the client, and how much it influences the design. The commissioning editor wants the image on the cover, and the designer wants a type-only cover. And when I saw that Tate did published both, I thought that was a really great idea, and I actually wanted to buy both. This one is an interesting one because it's one of those books that I wouldn't have necessarily picked up, and I saw it when I visited the awards exhibition. And again, with this tactile experience, I think I really had this I fell in love after playing with it and discovering it. And I think that's one thing in book design that's really important, is that you can't always have loads of stuff going on, but just this little surprise of finding the books inside is, it's amazing. Taking risks in the layouts. So there's a lot of really interesting examples by Visual Editions. It's just extraordinary to see publishers today in the time where everyone's talking about digital taking over, still doing these things. But there's the shelf life, like you were saying, about having the book facing outwards. And everyone was saying, well, the book is never going to face outwards because it's going to tip over. Can you ask the designer to make all books the same size? Can you do, So there was a bit of a tug of war between sales, bookshops, and eventually we created a sort of crate for the book. But it was a really interesting way where the designer managed to push his idea through. It's just nice to see people producing these things and experimenting and seeing what you can do with them. And to finish with, this is a book by Taobao. She's a contemporary artist, but she works a lot with the book as an object, and she experiments a lot with the color and what the book block can look like. And I thought that was a nice example to end on.
I'm not really an expert on book design, but I can safely say that I'm an expert on my book design. When we first set up Mobile, primary kind of reason for that was just that we kind of were massively depressed by the idea of the end of print. So I think that when we started to do our children's books, at first a lot of people thought we were a bit mad. This was one of the first books that we commissioned ourselves. First of all, this is a hardback book, and it's a non-fiction hardback book, and it's illustrated. And it just seems like, well, why not? But actually, when we did this, most non-fiction hardback children's picture books were kind of like Dorling Kindersley with lots of clip art and this kind of stuff. So it's a nice story, I think, about making things for children which you would want to see yourself. I think what we realised with our books were that a lot of the children's booksellers were only too keen to put them on display because they looked so nice. That word shelf life really means something. As soon as your book is no longer face out on a shelf, it's spine facing, and then it's invisible almost. So we originally did this book several years ago to do the whole thing not in CMYK but using 5 spot colours. For an illustrator, it's kind of a lot to get your head around, but it's thinking about working in a much more kind of printmaking, almost analog sort of style. But what you get is this really punchy colour. The printers that we used, they told us that they couldn't do it, and we said, no, you've got to do it, do it, do it, do it. And they did it, and they couldn't believe that it actually worked. And I just think that that's amazing, that there's still ways that we can kind of innovate with print now, and this is one of those.
So this book, this is by Irma Boom, who I think is probably one of the best book designers I've ever seen. But what's obviously completely fantastic about it is that it's only that size. But when I went to see her, somebody in the audience asked her what's her favourite book that she designed. She'd done this project with a textile artist called Sheila Hicks. What she did is all the paper's been specially made to a certain size, so it has this amazing textural effect around all the edges of the book. And I think this perhaps is the thing a lot of the books I really like are the ones that you just pick up and they're just amazingly tactile and just beautiful objects. I think that thing in a sort of digital age and a lot of information being produced online, I think as book designers you have to start producing stuff that's just amazingly tactile or format-wise, or the paper that you choose, I think is really key. So this is from a couple of years ago. Part of the whole resurgence of penguin book jackets over the last sort of 10 years or so. This was done by Jonathan Barnbrook for A Clockwork Orange. I think this is fucking stunning. And you can imagine the discussions with some publisher or editor saying, I think we should just put the word orange next to clockwork. And that's been resisted, and so the minimalism of this is stunning.